Before you dislike the video, I'm talking about how Tears of the Kingdom is a perfect example of how bad modern gaming is, because Tears of the Kingdom outshines practically every game that comes out nowadays. Well, any AAA game, I should say. Seriously, in a world where we get the same copy-paste Call of Duty game every year, free-to-play live service trash, and then just a plethora of completely broken games, honestly, Tears of the Kingdom was a breath of fresh air. All puns intended. To give you some background, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is not only my favorite Zelda game of all time, but it was probably in my top 5 favorite video games of all time, until Tears of the Kingdom came around anyways. Breath of the Wild really set the benchmark for how you should build an open world game, and yet somehow they were able to pull it off on the Nintendo Switch. Like, it's just unreal how they did that. And now that Tears of the Kingdom has been released, I can confidently say that it is so much better than Breath of the Wild somehow. Like, it's kind of weird because I loved Breath of the Wild so much that seeing how much better Tears of the Kingdom is, it's like taking a near perfect game and making it perfect, and that's exactly what Tears of the Kingdom did, in my opinion. Like, I legitimately find it 100 times more fun than Breath of the Wild. Like, I don't know if I can go back to Breath of the Wild after playing Tears of the Kingdom. It is just so good. Tears of the Kingdom is easily the best Zelda game to ever exist, and it is probably my top 3 favorite video games of all time. Number 1 being Halo 3, number 2 being Red Dead Redemption 2, and number 3 being Tears of the Kingdom now. If you were to ask me to critique Tears of the Kingdom, the only thing I can think of, off the top of my head anyways, is the performance. Unfortunately, this game is tied to the Nintendo Switch. You can only play it on the Nintendo Switch unless you somehow emulate it or illegally emulate it on your PC. And so it being on the Nintendo Switch, it just doesn't perform very well because the Switch is a very outdated console. The game is unfortunately locked to 30 FPS, and it even dips under 30 FPS in more intensive parts of the game. And while it overall does run better than Breath of the Wild did, because Breath of the Wild was originally built for the Wii U, with the added Sky Islands and the depths below Hyrule, Tears of the Kingdom can perform similar, if not worse, than Breath of the Wild at some points, which is pretty unfortunate. Other than the performance though, this game is like honestly perfect in my opinion. I genuinely cannot think of a single thing I dislike about it at the moment. I'm sure there are things, but off the top of my head, I really can't. And honestly, the gaming industry should really take after what Nintendo did with this game and how much care and love and time they put into it. While Nintendo is a very scummy company and their hardware and online services are like from the 90s, like I'm pretty sure they use dial-up for their freaking online services, they do sometimes put out spectacular games like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. I'm so sick of seeing modern gaming plaguing the industry when all I want is some fun, creative, and passionate games, single player or multiplayer. I really don't care either. Just make it a good game. More often than not, modern gaming, the plague of it anyways, attacks more of multiplayer, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it also does affect single-player games, which I'll also get into. But I really don't care if it's a multiplayer or single-player game. The modern standards for video games should be much higher and held to a much higher benchmark. If a game has had a consistent image since the beginning of development, with a consistently employed, passionate workforce, it's probably going to be a pretty good game. Most modern games, or I should say modern gaming companies, just rush out unfinished games, microtransactions, and recycled garbage, really, and it's just a mess. Halo Infinite, a game from my favorite video game franchise ever, as Halo 3 is my favorite video game of all time, has fallen victim to the modern gaming culture. Modern gaming. Halo Infinite had a very messy development with no clear image of where the game should be, and they kept changing plans throughout the development process. They relied on contractors to build the game instead of full-time employees, and there was massive studio interference, which I think was just the biggest problem. It's just altogether, it just made a mess of a game, unfortunately. Even after an entire year's delay, Halo Infinite only launched with 1/3 of the original content that was intended for the game, and the multiplayer was just super bare bones. and like it was just, there was nothing in it. There was nothing in the game. And of course the multiplayer went free, so it's just stuffed of microtransactions with egregious prices instead of actual fun content. And even though the gameplay overall was fun, everything surrounding that wasn't. It's been out for 1.5 years now, and they still don't have a ton of content. I mean, they did add Forge and Customs Browser and, like, you know, some big things, but the consistency is only starting to get there now, and it's been 1.5 years. The game is practically dead, and it's just unfortunate that it fell victim to the broken at launch, no content at launch, we'll fix it later in patch and stuff. Nobody wants that, but that's what happened. Jedi Survivor, a game that just came out, launched a broken, buggy mess for a full $70 price tag. Now, I heard the game is fun overall, but it's unbelievably broken and was clearly rushed out the door, even after multiple delays. And don't even get me started on Cyberpunk or Fallout 76, because Fallout 76 came out way before it should have, with no delays, and Cyberpunk was delayed so much and still needed to be delayed. They should have just never announced a release date in the first place. The modern gaming industry, especially with multiplayer games, has really turned me off from a lot of game franchises and video games in general, which is pretty unfortunate. If it's clear a game has no passion behind it, like Redfall, or was clearly rushed out the door way too quick like Cyberpunk, I typically just don't want to play it. Now, I think Cyberpunk is a really good game now. I would highly recommend playing it now. And Redfall, even though it's been poorly received everywhere, I actually kind of enjoyed it. But the reason I actually played Redfall is because it's on Xbox Game Pass, so I got it for free with Game Pass. But I would never pay for that game because it is clearly below the standards of a AAA $70 game. But that's the problem. Releasing a game now and fixing it later is a stupid motto for the modern gaming industry to follow. And I'm so sick of it. While every game will launch with bugs and doesn't launch perfectly, Tears of the Kingdom, and honestly most AAA Nintendo games, prove that it is still possible to launch a fully complete game in a very good playable state, even with the lackluster power of the Nintendo Switch. I find it so funny that Nintendo, having to use hardware that feels like it's from the 2000s, with the Nintendo Switch anyways, are managing to pump out better games than these games that run on the Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5. These super high-end games. It's like baffling to me. For a premium price tag of $70, Tears of the Kingdom gets you a massive open world that reaches high into the sky and into the depths beneath Hyrule. To look at my script here, we have a full main story, which Breath of the Wild kind of lacked, numerous side quests, shrines, dungeons, bosses, abilities, etc. Tears of the Kingdom has literally over 100 hours of gameplay, and probably that's just for the normal person who just kind of takes their time with the game, and it's probably way longer for completionists. It is a very big game that has so much to do. It is definitely worth that $70 premium price tag, even if it doesn't hold up performance-wise. Unfortunately, I still think it's worth it because it is one of the best games I've ever played. Oh yeah, and the game actually works. On the other hand, you have FIFA 23, another $70 game. Now, this video isn't here to clown on sports games, but I believe all sports games are ripoffs and just reskins of the previous years for a full $70. And, well, FIFA is probably the worst offender of this, considering they're full of microtransactions as well. And arguably, with each FIFA game, the games just get worse. From what I've heard, because I've never actually bought one, I would never do that to myself, is that with each new release, it just gets buggier and buggier with the very few features that they add, and it's just why on earth? I could probably play a FIFA game from 7 years ago, and I would have the same experience I'm having with the newest one. Now, these are pretty stark differences in AAA games, and honestly, one of them should not be called a AAA game. Tears of the Kingdom is definitely worth it, and FIFA will never be. Like I said before, the only AAA quality Tears of the Kingdom lacks is 60 FPS, but besides it being locked on the Switch, it's one of the best video games you could ever buy, in my opinion. Now, it would be easy for me to say that all AAA games, modern AAA games, are bad, but they really aren't. Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic AAA game, as I've been hyping up this whole video. God of War Ragnarok just came out last year. One of my favorite PlayStation games ever, and definitely my favorite God of War game. It's so good. And while that's, well, Yeah, actually, that's all I can really think of right now. I'm sure there's more great AAA games, but like, it's that bad that modern AAA games, the only two I can think of off the top of my head, as of recently, are Tears of the Kingdom and God of War Ragnarok that are actually good, that work on launch and aren't full of microtransactions. That's kind of sad. Now, this video, if you couldn't tell, was kind of my attempt at integrating a Tears of the Kingdom light review with a rant, really, about modern gaming in general. I haven't finished Tears of the Kingdom as of filming this video, but I'm sure I'll be even more happy with the product after I'm finished with it. I'm truly trying to take my time and experience the game for what it is, and do everything I can in the game and not try and rush through it. If you loved Breath of the Wild, I guarantee you will love Tears of the Kingdom way more. It's such a good game. And as for the modern gaming culture, take a hike. We don't want you anymore.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
Oh, also check out Actman's video on modern gaming if you were wondering where all the clips are from. It's actually really entertaining. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. And, any engagement with the video will help boost in the algorithm, as you probably have heard a million times. So I would appreciate any engagement with the video, like even a dislike would. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.
Modern gaming kind of fucking sucks.